classify the later period. What's the Beaux-Arts first? I told you about the Gilded Age. And Gilded Age, as I said, is not a style. Beaux-Arts is sort of a style. Beaux-Arts goes all the way back to this. Remember this? Vaux-le-Vicomte is what inspired Versailles and a lot of things since then. And the typical, if you say to somebody, what is Beaux-Arts? The most famous Beaux-Arts building is the Paris Opera, which is properly called the Palais Garnier by Charles Garnier, and look when it was built. This was the time, the height of the style, and named after, the Beaux-Arts style is named after the École des Beaux-Arts, the School of the Beautiful Arts in Paris. It was the architecture and art school. It was where everybody went if they could afford it, including the best of the Americans. The Americans who all went there came back and designed, you know, the Metropolitan Museum, the New York Public Library, and the buildings in that style done in New York. And, well, most of them in New York, and Chicago too. And Chicago for the World's Fair, and I think I'm going to show you that later on. But this was the way you design. Now this is sort of, what should I say, it's a combination of Renaissance Revival and Baroque, but more so. And this is the interior. And this interior inspired, even I am too young to remember, but this is what the great department stores looked like. Mm-hmm. And the great department stores were places like the ones I've heard of in New York, Wanamaker's. And there was a Wanamaker's in Philadelphia. And these department stores, just I want you to know something of New York history, were down, okay, have anybody, there's a Home Depot on 23rd Street, and then there are some big buildings on 6th Avenue going from 23rd Street to about 17th Street. So we're talking about Bed Bath & Beyond, and where Barnes & Noble used to be, and now it's, what's the cheap, not Whole Foods, what's the other?
Trader Joe's.
Huh?
Trader Joe's.
Yes, Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's on 6th Avenue. There's a TJ Maxx in one of the buildings. We're Bed Bath & Beyond. Yeah. That section, all those big buildings, when you're down there, look at them carefully. That used to be called the Ladies' Mile. That was where the department stores were. And they all apparently, and I've seen photographs of Wanamaker's, had a great center atrium. Okay, it wasn't as elaborate as this, but had a grand staircase and a second floor, and the middle of the, down here was where they put the Christmas tree, and everybody went there, and they were spectacularly decorated. And there is, you know, there's nothing like that. I mean, Bloomingdale's isn't anything like that. Saks isn't anything like that. All of them were later. This is where they were called the palaces of the people, well, the department stores, and then later the movie theaters were this kind of thing. They were where you went to pretend that you lived the way the really rich people did. And there are even remnants of it. Some, I've been in a couple of European department stores that are done this way, not as fancy, but they're done with a center courtyard and the rest of it open for you to overlook from the different levels. I'm not aware, well, wait a minute. Beaumarchais in San Francisco has preserved some of that kind of decor. And Marshall Field in Chicago has preserved some of it. But, I mean, this is the ultimate. This was, I want you to know about the lifestyle because it went down to people like us, not through our doing it in our houses, but our doing it in public spaces. And for those of you who've been to the Metropolitan, how many of you have been to the Metropolitan Opera? Okay, Metropolitan Opera. Okay, the Opera House now has a grand staircase. Tom, is it anything like that? No, I mean, it doesn't make it, and it has modern chandeliers which go up and down, and they're nice. But it's also, people don't dress up this way anymore. But it was a grand, yeah, it's very sad. Now that used to be, when I was first married, we went to the opera. We had a friend's ticket on Monday nights. And people came, and Monday night was dress up night. That was society night. So I would wear You never heard the term. There was something called a cocktail dress, which was your black silk dress. And we would go in and you would see the people in long gowns and the Victorian diamonds and ermine, big padded shoulder, the family fur coats. In other words, not the high fashion ones, the ones that you knew had been passed down. And even a couple of people wearing diamond tiaras. And that was like in the 70s. And it was lovely. And nobody dresses up anymore, you know. People go in jeans to the opera, which is sort of pitiful.
Yeah, sad.
It really is a shame, because it was fun seeing what people were like. This is just a drawing of it, and this is showing all, you know, where all the interiors. I'm not going to show you, but I want to show you generally the plan that is sort of following the plan of a classical building, a little bit.
Oh.
And here is another, you know, more recent shot of the detail, showing you, I mean, when they're so beautiful, I can't decide which shot to leave out. And this, it's not that you have to know, okay, if I showed you the exterior, you have to recognize the Paris Opera House. If I showed you the interior, you have to know this is a Beaux-Arts interior. And I didn't recognize this one when I first saw the image. This is what it first looked like. And Calvert Vaux, remember? He did the other house that I showed you. He did Olana. This is what the Metropolitan Museum looked like when it was first built, in the time of the Gilded Age. And it's considered Beaux-Arts style. The extension, it depends. The Temple of Dendor is not Beaux-Arts. Most of the rest of what they've done more or less follows the style. But it's been impinging onto the park since it was started. Okay, what I wanted to show you another mansion. I don't know why I skipped an image, but this is another mansion of the era of the Vanderbilt mansion. This was Tiffany's own, and I'm not showing you interiors from it. They were the same kind of thing in the interiors. In fact, his own house, but I just had too many images to show. His own house, called Laurelton Hall, had some beautiful stained glass windows. At least a couple of them are in the Metropolitan Museum. And the fountain in the museum, when you're walking from the main area of the museum towards when you went to the American wing, you passed a couple of stained glass windows. On your right was something from Laurelton Hall. He was able to do what he wanted with his own house. The two most famous Gilded Age mansions were done for two of the Vanderbilt brothers by the same architect, Richard Morris Hunt. You need to know his name. He was architect to the rich people, to the people who counted, to many of them. At the same time, he was working on two mansions. He was working on the Breakers in Newport, Rhode Island, for Cornelius Vanderbilt, who was a yachtsman, and he was working on the Biltmore Estate in Asheville, North Carolina, for the younger brother, George. Now, he was same architect, he wasn't going to do the same thing. They are equally elaborate. I'm not sure which you'd say, well, the other one is larger, but I'll show you that. These were the country houses. They went there, they